welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who's done 95 podcasts with me and has been wearing an emblem of the Dark Servants the whole time.
Tim Longo. Yes, my flowing beard has, I may be bald, but my flowing beard has covered up my dark secret.
I had no idea.
And then in the nice moment of the wind, the breeze blowing my beard aside.
Happened to, I knew I should have pinned you down and taped you to a cushion or something and shaved you years ago. I thought you were just trying to compensate. Anyway, of course, we're talking about the final moments of Anachronox at this very moment. It is quite a thing, this game. And it gets progressively more difficult. That final battle is pretty insane. Thankfully, I got a hint from from the people watching me play. Although I didn't beat it on stream. I had some help from Aaron, in fact. So hello, Aaron. Thank you for the hint. I was able to go back and do it last night. So I did. I was able to get back around to it, but I didn't.
Which battle are you talking about? Not to jump ahead.
The final battle.
With Ganon?
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, I feel like that was Ganondorf from, I don't know. He just looked like a Zelda character to me. I don't even know who it was.
Yeah, I don't think he gets a name. He probably has one when you target him, but I was too busy.
That's true, yeah.
All the timing of all that was pretty tricky. But before we get to that, let's do the other thing. So where we left off last time was we had the Democratus, the greatest party member ever, had expanded, and we were split up on the surface. And here was the weird thing I didn't know, and Tim told me in pre-show. We had different parties at that point, or at least one different party member. And so there's different content based on who's in your party. That is insane to me.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about yours, and tell me if there's anything like specific to your character. I'm just baffled at this decision.
Well, in my case, yeah, because so we both did the Paco, right? Because we both would have had Paco in our party because of Grimacer.
That happens automatically, yes.
Yeah.
Paco becomes part of your party. So we both had Sly and Wittenden and Paco in this military base.
Yeah. So
El Fisto.
I had Rho.
Okay.
And if you have Rho, you go to this place called Tensil, which is sort of a alien tribal kind of Incan Aztec kind of place that's like, I think kind of in the mountains, but kind of deserty. And you go to this, it's so funny that I'm telling you something you didn't see. And so you hit this town, and what are these? I forget the name of the species of alien, but they kind of look like dog people. And they have their own religion, and one of the things that they do is they want you. They know of a nearby human town that they will tell you where it is if you do something for them. They need to earn your trust, of course, and so you have to find these leaves, because part of their religion is they chew on these leaves. Silver leaves and gold leaves, and you need to find 4 gold leaves, and there's this whole like sub-quest where to get 4 gold leaves you have to find these silver leaves and then trade them up to get 1 gold leaf, and it's a bunch of side quests and running around this little mini town, and you earn their trust that way, and he's going to tell you your fortune if you give him 4 leaves. And then once you earn their trust, they're like, okay, well, we actually need your help in this temple, because let's see, what the heck are you going down there to do? You go to the bottom of the temple. Oh my God, it's escaping me. Let me look really quick. Anyway,
is there some kind of boss or something down there?
There's a boss down there, but I forget why you're going down there. Anyway, pause on that. But the point being is, this temple is across this rope bridge, and it's essentially it's a series of puzzles that are all kind of symbol based, kind of based on their religion, I guess. These symbols are important to them. And so there's all pattern recognition and all this stuff. But in each one of them, there are these ghosts of the dead dog people. And there's like an ancient console, and Rho does her analysis on, and so you have to have her to do these because you need the clues from the consoles to solve each of the puzzles. And each of the puzzles, like some of them are navigation, some of them are pattern recognition. They're all kind of thematic, but not really too closely tied. But it felt very Tomb Raider-y to me when I was playing it. So I can see maybe, although this was 96, right? Or when was this? What was the year for this?
2001.
Okay, so maybe some, yeah. So, Tomb Raider was on people's minds. So it felt kind of like that. But it was very Rho-centric in the way that there's no combat in that section. It was all puzzles. And actually, yeah, I don't think there was a boss now that I think about it.
Yeah, okay. Whereas I was with Stiletto Anyway. I was in this place called Doran, which was a forest where I'm walking around and there are all these dudes in like military armor, white military armor, and they all look the same.
Whoa. Like stormtroopers?
Like stormtroopers. You got it in one. The whole area is
Endor.
It's an Endor. Oh, you got it from the spelling. You got it. The whole thing is a Star Wars ripoff / parody / I don't even know what. They're not actually stormtroopers. They're miners or something who came across some old military equipment and put it on to defend themselves, but they're terrible. Like they're not fighters at all. So you have to
so you're saying they can't shoot straight?
They can't. They don't even have guns, as far as I can tell. They are patrolling and stuff.
Another stormtrooper joke. That's why.
Yeah. No, I know. I gotcha. I've seen those movies.
You want me to lay it out for you and explain? Sorry. Okay, continue. I'll shut up.
When it comes to my Star Wars knowledge, I find your lack of faith.
Yeah. Which is it? Anyway, continue.
Anyway, so
that's wild.
Yeah, so it's this whole thing, and at some point, Blue Harvest is mentioned.
Yes.
That's
great.
The code name for Return of the Jedi. I had to look that up. I'm like, that's a Star Wars thing, isn't it? Anyway, you go and you end up fighting all these Ewoks that are called Wookiees, which is like Wookiees. And you end up finding a whole bunch of them, going through the forest and finding their queen and killing the queen. So it's all combat.
Oh, so yeah, opposite. Basically.
Very little puzzling. I think the only thing, I don't think there was any puzzling now that I think about it. I think it was all just like get to the boss. And the boss was pretty cool because she would summon other Wookiees and they would they'd move into position and ultimately they'd start to get in the way. So you actually had to kill some of them because you couldn't otherwise get a clear shot at the queen who was kind of behind. So there was this big arena area where they would slowly move in. Every so often they would move closer to you, and once they got sort of in line, you had to. So it was a puzzly sort of battle, or an attention splitting thing of like, I have to manage what I'm going to attack more carefully. But I was very powered up in terms of mistech at that point, so I did very well. I actually want to take a little sidebar to the whole Elementor thing. Did you spend any more time on that?
I did one time. I delved into it to try to figure some of it out, and I kind of just got befuddled by it, and I stopped. So I regret not really. I collected the bugs as I found the mounds along the way, but I I never used it. So what is the deal with that thing? Did you?
I don't know. I did know better.
I tried
all the ones I found from that point forward, but I think you really need to go back. Because I know there's a ton around bricks. And I didn't go back and find all of those.
Well, I didn't go find all of them, but when you had to go back to, to get to one gate at the end and all that stuff, you kind of run through Anachronox.
Yeah, you do pass a couple of them, but there are
there's
a red one and a purple one and a white one that I can think of that are all near Grumpus's apartment building or fairly near there.
Well, also you find more
near,
of the devices, right? You find like different
I do. I had 4 of them, I think, total.
Okay, yeah, I found
2
3.
single, a bivice, and a trivice.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I found the trivice. That was the last one I found. No, I didn't.
I still have no idea what any of that was about. It's something, I guess, that could have been. I mean, it's so weird because they put all that effort into having those things around the world, the universe, and everything, and the different planets, and then that just never really paid off.
Well, you get out of it what you put into it, maybe. Maybe it would have made the final battle easier.
Maybe it's hard to say. I mean, the real. We'll get to the final battle, but the real difficulty of the final battle was not how much damage I could do. It was more. Yeah, all the status effects that I was totally dealing with the whole time, more than anything else. So,
oh, interesting. Okay, I want to. Yeah, we'll get to that, but I want to hear what you mean by that. But
okay, we'll get to that. Anyway, so we did that, and then Paco had his own thing in a military base, which was pretty funny. They all had these keywords, these code phrases or whatever. Yeah, and they all were acronyms for like different forms of anger, like wrath and things like that. I don't know, snide. I don't remember what they all were. They were all kind of funny little, like if you looked at the first letter of each word.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Nice.
Oh yeah, they spelled out things like anger and wrath, and they were all five letters. It was pretty funny.
It was just a funny commentary on military protocol. It's like. I can't talk to you.
You got to work your way up the chain, and it was pretty good. I like that little area. I laughed a lot actually in that little bit of just like the names are funny, but I think if you go to them and you haven't actually found the key phrase, it won't offer it to you. So you couldn't just go to the last guy and do it. So you actually have to.
You had to do them in order. Yeah.
You have to do it was a chain. I thought was good.
This whole game has done a great job at different ways to repurpose lock and key logic. Basically, the whole thing is, just dialogue, lock and key, and they just stretch the heck out of that throughout the whole thing. What do you think about Paco's minigame, which I also thought was hilarious when you finally have to...
So I felt like I was playing Dota. You have to have such a high click rate, of I got to click as fast as I possibly can. But
I don't think you have to click. I wasn't clicking. You just have to
don't click.
No,
you just have to keep it in there.
You just have to keep it in there.
Oh wow! Oh, I didn't.
Well, I didn't click, and I was able to do it. So maybe the clicking helps. I don't know. Yeah, I just was keeping it in there.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I was clicking like mad. Nobody told me. Nobody told me in the stream comments that I was doing it wrong. All the other ones have lots of clicking, so I assumed that was what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it could have helped me. Maybe I don't know. I'll try. Well, I won't try that. Actually,
you won't.
I'm done.
You're done. Yeah.
They didn't tutorialize that one very much, though. Or at least I didn't get one. Or maybe I clicked.
I didn't get one either. I didn't feel like I missed anything there, and I just guessed that was what I was supposed to be doing.
What a funny character. I mean, as a quick aside, I do want to mention, though ham-fistedly implemented, I guess I give them kudos for, a wide range of character types, both races and sexes and species, in fact, and stuff. And I don't know, is this
and non-humans
for this? Yeah, for this time, a planet. For this time in the games industry, it wasn't as common as it should have been. Even though I think they could have been a better job, because some of the stereotypes go too far, Stiletto and even Paco. But at least they were exploring it, so that was nice. But yeah, it was a cool, again, in a fairly simple set of systems and mechanics for the game overall. They found interesting ways, like splitting up your characters in this case, and designing levels based on those characters, so they could actually. It's kind of, even though you're limited because you only have the one character, it gives them some design freedom because they know that you have this one character for this level, right? So they can design it for it. They don't have to accommodate all the different permutations, and so even though it's you have fewer options, it actually gives them more design options because they can So I got to hand it to them for being that bold. And then to your point, and there's also a level for PAL if you have PAL, by the way, that neither of us played.
Right.
So we didn't see that one.
And who else would there be? So
that's it.
That's everybody, I guess. Yeah, because Democratus is a planet again, and Grumpos
you're
refuses,
on Democratus,
right? And Grumpos refuses to partake,
something like that,
or whatever. We don't know.
It just fair. Every once in a while, it just kind of I was reminded that we were on Democratus, you know,
yeah,
and it's just like the levels are freaking all over this party member that you've had in your party. And then, of course, we'll have again. It's just blowing my mind. Oh, man.
It's an insane choice. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure I understand the thinking of, like, why have these three different characters? I mean, the common denominator is they could all do puzzling. So I wonder why it's not just puzzling.
What do you mean?
Well, having the Star Wars level for Stiletto and in this Tomb Raider level for Rho and whatever for PAL. We don't know what PAL's was. I don't understand why make three different levels.
You mean why split them up at all? Or
no, I don't mean that. I mean, we know they're split up, and that's cool.
Oh, you mean have them play the same levels?
Why have a unique level?
Well,
for those. For three different characters, nobody's going to play the game three times to get to that content.
Did you watch the credits all the way through till they looped?
I don't think that I did, actually.
So
no.
I hope we get our guest on so we can ask him about this. But essentially, as far as I can, and the reason this is relevant, so bear with me for a second to your question.
Okay.
Basically, I feel like he was finishing the credits like at the 11th hour. It was probably 2 a.m. He maybe was drunk and nobody checked his work. Because after the credits finish, there's basically him or somebody, I think it's Tom, typing in a bunch of just jokes and sentences and random stuff. And I watched the whole thing, and it probably was an additional 10 minutes of just waiting for him to see what he does, and then it loops eventually. So I knew I was finished, but you might want to just YouTube it or something just to see it. But one of the sentences he writes in there is, "Hey, did you play all of the side quests for all of the characters? They're all really cool. You should go back and play them." So the reason I bring that up is around this era, there was a bit of a narrative of replayability. And
right.
How do we get people to go back into a game? Because so many of the games were just linear, story-based games at the time, other than the Quakes of the world. And so maybe, my suspicion is that they wanted they did want people to go back in and play all different versions. So
to that point, I wonder if that's sort of his own answer to what his compatriot and in the same company, Warren Spector, was doing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And which is something we haven't really talked about at all. The fact that this is an Ion Storm game, and what a crazy whole story that is.
I wrote that note down on the first. I forgot about that. I wrote that down for the first episode, and we never hit it. I mean,
we never got around to it. Well, we can tackle it now. So for those who aren't in the know, Ion Storm was founded. Gosh, I don't even know. I want to say in like 1999, maybe even in 2000, by John Romero. And he got Tom Hall. I think Tom Hall maybe even co-founded it with him.
Yeah, it was
if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it was a little earlier than that even. It was 96. Okay, so it was basically after... that'd be after Quake 2, I guess. And they took their big winnings out of working on Quake and Doom for John. I don't know if Tom goes that far back.
He goes pretty far.
He does go pretty far. And they started this new company, which was going to make John's next first-person shooter, which was Daikatana, which is famed across the industry. We won't get into it now. But also...
John's credited on this game, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I mean, he was co-owner of the company.
Well, he did some level design and cleanup. That's where.
Oh,
he
really?
was.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it wasn't credited in the other way.
Yeah, all right.
It's so
Interesting.
funny. Yeah.
And then, of course, Anachronox, and then the other big heavy hitter from the studio was Deus Ex, which came. I guess. Yeah, it didn't come out. When did that come out? Deus Ex.
It's around. It's I think the year
around
after
the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually the year before. It's in 2000.
Okay.
So, yeah.
They used Unreal for that game. So.
Right.
Versus this one using id Tech. Yeah.
Yep. Quake 2.
The interesting thing about Ion Storm, though, and I don't know if you agree, but it was almost like this. I feel like in a way, from my memory, it was almost like an indie. We have this thing going on now in the industry where you have big names leaving big developers to start up their own stuff, right? And it's like, oh, these are the guys that founded this company, and they're going to form a 6-person studio and create their own thing. It's almost like indie devs before there were indie devs. You know what I mean? Like he found some of the best and the brightest.
Always devs, but yes. Yeah,
no, I know I know that, technically, but you know what I mean? The spirit of it was like they were sort of these. Ion Storm was almost like this brash sort of like move for him to go, because he convinced the War Inspectors of the world to come with him and form this separate company. It was almost like, I don't know how much you know about comics, but when Image was created, they broke off of DC and Marvel, and Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, and all of the heavy hitters, Rob Liefeld, they all formed up against the big publishers, essentially saying, hey, we don't need you. We're the talent. We're going to create our own company. And Image today is still going strong, and one of the most important, So anyway, it's just this interesting of like getting rid of the big publishers and thinking differently about it. And of course, they worked with IDOS, which was maybe medium size at the time, but they didn't partner up with the EAs of the world. Just an interesting sort of like rebel move Ion Storm was.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing is that this was a time when creators were trying to find a way to be better represented, I think, in the products in some way.
Mm-hmm. Remember that ad for them where they had all of their faces? It was a pretty famous ad.
Sure. And then I was also saying it was kind of in the following on Gathering of Developers, the publisher.
Yep, same.
Which sort of struck out to basically enable that, give developer teams a better shake on royalties for publishing. And it was definitely an era where creatively people were straining against the restrictions of the big money publishers.
Reaction to a bad kind of trend that was happening to developers. Yeah,
absolutely.
And
it was the same. Mostly the same companies are around today, but I'm thinking like EA and Activision and stuff like that were kind of the big heavy hitters, and trying to find a way to take. I mean, this is a hot commodity, John Romero, for example, at that time, and him going and saying, you know what, I'm strong enough to go out on my own. My name connects with people, and people will want to play my game. So it's a whole thing. Yeah, and Tom definitely was at id too. So I just don't remember how far back he goes there. Anyway.
Yeah. It's Ion Storm. For those who are interested, it's definitely an interesting story. If you weren't around during that time. But they had that big like gatefold, 2-page ad that was entirely focused on the developers that they've all partnered with to make Ion Storm, and they were in multiple cities as well. They weren't just in one location, so it was another example of like cross the world development, which was not as common at that point. So, and they were celebrating the creators, with that. So it was interesting. Yeah, I don't know if this game would have gotten made under any other circumstances, to be honest. Like we talked a little bit about that. It's just such a weird pitch.
Yeah, it is. It is a weird. Nobody would have paid them to make this. They had to go and do this with money that they could get, and based on their names, I think, as well. But yes, this is not. It's hard to. I mean, it's like self-publishing, really, in a sense, right? We're going to fund this. We're going to make this thing happen. We've got Quake money or whatever, and we're going to find a way to do this. Yeah. So there's tons of history on Ironstorm. I think Masters of Doom, the book, covers it pretty well. I can definitely remember when the New York Times Magazine had an article about Ironstorm and just how wild it was to think of that at that time. And then later on, I think the Dallas paper had a really good expose of how it all kind of fell apart. So,
yeah,
mostly for being too expensive, the development, but just because of how much they were paying in rent, for example. I mean, they had this penthouse, top two floors or something of this very tall building in Dallas. So really quite a thing. But it was something. I mean, it definitely speaks to keeping your costs down when you're developing.
Well, it was in that weird era that I feel like game development, like rock stardom, was at a weird high. I think largely because of the id folks and some of the epic, folks, and and the here and there. But it was just that. I don't know, and it wasn't even just in games. I think it was just a weird time when, I don't know, that awkward, technologists were starting to be, deified a little bit more, and John specifically was riding that wave a little too much, it seemed like.
Yeah, maybe. All right, anyway, let's return to the game. In the meantime, I guess Sly has been dealing with Whittington.
Yeah.
Did you catch the motif of that whole thing?
Catch it? What do you mean?
So, do you know what movie it was all based around?
Oh, no, other than my love of John le Carre films and books.
No, it's not any of that.
No.
No, so I caught on to what it was about fairly early, and I totally missed the big clue. Okay, so you remember how you're walking around and everybody is identifying you as somebody else? Peter?
Yeah. Mm-hmm, Peter, yeah. And you have,
right?
Yep.
And how you broke up with Lori?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Peter Lorre.
Oh. Are you serious?
It's all based around M, the movie he made with Fritz Lang.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a person that you can talk to who basically who says the introductory couple of sentences that are from the movie M. And when I talk to that person, I'm like, hey, that sounds really familiar. And I went and I'm like, I think that's M. And on the stream, I'm like,
you're such
let me just look that up. And I flipped over to my browser window and said, oh, look. Oh, yeah, this is, I think this is definitely what it is. But I didn't catch on to the Peter Lorre thing. And finally somebody said, Peter Lorre? I'm like, oh, duh. I couldn't believe I missed that. But I got
that's funny. No, I would never.
Because M begins with that long sort of setting of the stage of where we are. And it has a voiceover, I think, that's described. Maybe
it's been years. I haven't.
Yeah, it's text. I can't even remember at this point, but it basically has a couple sentences basically telling you that there's this prowler on the loose, and that was right there. So yeah, yep, good callback to it. I mean, it's that's going to be one of my takeaways, I think, for the game. Anyway, so you do all that. Everybody gets back together, and we go to Limbus.
Yeah.
Right. Is that pretty much what happens next? Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, we kind of go back and forth a few times. It's not worth mentioning, but it's really just Limbus and then Anachronox after. Yeah. Limbus was, yeah.
Yeah. So Limbus is this planet of the dead, and you basically get a big chunk of the story of what the hell's been going on the whole time. You've been sent to Limbus by the the Archbishop of the
Hephaestus.
Yeah, at the cathedral there, and you show up there, and I thought this was kind of cool. You get to I mean, it takes you a bit of time to get in there. There's a tough battle to actually get into the place, and once you get in there, they're like, "But those were our guardians. You killed our guardians."
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah,
now we're not going to be able to fend off the evil dark servants or whatever, and you get a bit of a lore dump of like, oh, then this is what's been going on, and we paint the history of what's been going on, and there's more explanation of the whole chaos and order, and we have to protect this place because whatever, and who knows?
What was the gate, the warp gate called? I forget what they called it, but the Eye of Doom or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this concept of how all of that macro story relates to their this tribe's sort of like the stories that the mythology behind their religion and stuff, and how that relates to, it's actually, what it actually is coming from, but it's also to them it means something else, and it's that was really neat. And I also liked the little kind of tidbit of splitting the party up to go do different tasks in the defense, which was
I like that a lot.
Really clever.
Although this was a case where I thought I had to let the gun recharge like every shot, and so I missed several. Yeah, it was not super well explained. That's fine, and then everybody does their battles, and I think I only lost one dude the whole time. It was not particularly difficult, but it was fun to have 3 different battles and have some buddies helping you fight. I like that section a lot. I have to say, I didn't. I mean, a lot of the lore stuff kind of. I didn't really care one way or another. I did like the visual design of those enemies though, with the 2 rods kind of out off to one side, the sort of asymmetric. One might even say chaotic silhouette that they have. I thought that was good character design for what they were supporting. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I liked that the aliens were kind of like I forget what they're called, but in Dark Crystal, the good creatures.
Oh yeah, that's a good callback. Yeah, they were. They're I don't know, for some reason I had the Morlocks from Time Machine in my head too a little bit.
Another interesting one. Yeah,
I don't know. They just had it was a nice alien tribal feel. They were low tech, really elaborate cinematics in that section too, of like them going to battle, and again a little overwrought with how far they went with some of that stuff. They were overdoing it. But yeah, I feel like to some degree it was definitely cool to get some of the backstory stuff. But for me, some of it was like Limbus. Almost the biggest payoff for Limbus was its connection back to Anachronox. And what you're about to get to is once we get off of that planet, you got to go back and you're the last mission you get from the leader of that tribe is to go and meet up with this guy who is undercover in Anachronox looking for the gate. I forget the name of the gate. The Echo Gate, I think.
The Echo Gate, right. The key to the Echo Gate.
And you can't pronounce his name because it's a ridiculous alien name, but it's obviously shortened to Rowdy.
Yeah.
And so,
you don't go there first. First, you got to go to Deda's palace.
Deda's palace. Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. The final, because going and talking to Rowdy takes you basically to the end of the game.
Yeah,
maybe if you it may be possible to
because you need to get the key, right? You need.
Oh, right. He said to you, oh, but I tried to give you a quest a month ago or whatever. You have to get this key, right? Okay, the key to my closet or whatever he said. The key to my gate. That's right. You're right. And then you go to Deda's palace, and then you get the key back. Okay.
Yeah. I just that. I mean, you mentioned in pre-show, but I just love that there's this, and actually you've seen this race of aliens before in a couple, they've been wandering around and stuff, and then he takes off his mask and he's one of those aliens.
Yeah.
And it was literally the first person you talked to in the game.
Yep.
I believe was Rowdy, right? And
he tried to give you the quest, which actually turned out to be the whole quest you've been on the whole time.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's nice little circular story going on there, and there's just that nostalgia for just going back to the bar that you started in, and
yeah,
and they even in the cinematics they kind of play that up.
You're back in the same place, but you're not the same man.
Oh, well said.
There's been a lot of change that's gone on in Sly Boots' life, and some of that's reflected in the final cutscene, and he can be a little bit more humble to Fatima there and all that stuff. But in particular, it's like, well, the place may not have changed, but he has an awful lot.
On that note about his change, I don't think we talked too much about it, but I believe the facial expression tech we have to mention, because at this time everyone was trying to crack that nut. You know what I mean? It was on the cusp of that, and looking before we started playing, looking in the wiki and stuff on this game, that's one of the key features mentioned, and I'm really surprised at how much they use it in this game. Like, there are moments when there are shots where Boots will change his facial expression multiple times in one shot. You know what I mean? That, like, at the very end, I forget the scene or the context for the scene, but I feel like maybe it was related to Fatima. I forget, but he like smiles and he frowns, and you can kind of see it working, like super janky low poly, but that just wasn't something that a lot of games were doing in real time. And so you got to hand it to him for that tech. I mean, they had mouths and tongues and, and there's even teeth in there and stuff. And it looks, terrible, but at the time it was pretty neat.
At the time it was pretty good. And we talked on the stream, a couple of weeks ago about how, the original Max Payne had also really, which is the same year,
everyone was trying to,
right. Everybody was trying to find a different way, and how Max Payne had done it was just putting 4 times as much texture density in the face as in anything else, and basically his face didn't really animate that much, but it was super high detail in terms of how it looked, right? So the fact that he was basically just kind of squinty, smirky guy the whole time was fine, because it looked so good, and it showed off really well in screenshots. And one thing. And that was probably to its benefit in advertising and marketing and all this stuff as well, because you can't sell at the time. Downloading video or streaming video was not a big thing, so you wouldn't be able to see the thing in motion, probably in advertising or on the net much, or relatively speaking. I'm sure there was some, but I don't remember it being a big thing in 2001. It feels like it came a few years later. All right, so we go back to Rowdy. He says, you have to do this. And to do it, you've got to break into Vendetta's palace through one gate. You have to go to this posh area of town, I guess, where he's got these huge
gated
compound.
community.
Yeah. And that is quite elaborate, that whole...
Yeah, that's where I had realized I'd fully underestimated the ending. And I think I maybe looked up 1 or 2 clues there, because I knew I was getting close to getting stuck. I was like, I got to power through this. But yeah, so the other thing they do is
for the record, I did not. I just want to.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, I think it was the data pad code for, those data pads you find throughout the level. I couldn't figure out what that was for some reason. I'd figured out the encryption thing, but anyway, yeah. The cool thing they do there is you have the entire party, but they split you up, and you can swap between them, and you need to use PAL specifically to kind of ungate and unlock. Well, you use everybody, but to unlock each other's progression throughout that complex, which was, like you said, pretty complex and
it's like a cool heist. It's like a cool heist movie where you've got multiple teams doing their thing, and one guy.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's like in Die Hard where you've got the guy who's actually doing the work to open the vault, and everybody else is running around in small groups in different floors of the building. except that here you're more the good guy. So it's also got that sort of Sly Cooper. I guess the third one is the most heisty. I can't remember now, but one of the Sly Coopers is very heisty focused, where you're doing different. I guess they all have it to a degree, not the first one, but maybe the second and third. Maybe the second one in particular is the one I'm thinking of. But having that feel of, okay, I got to get this person into position. Great, they're in position. Let me move this person into position. Oh, the robot needs to help me because there's some bridge that they can't cross because it's in the wrong position. And there's a lot of just like, oh, I need to go over here. And the robot will tell you, Pal will tell you, oh, I shouldn't move on yet. They might need me.
Right.
So you're clued in very well. You can't break it. Which I was a little worried about. Like, oh, how long? Like, who's gonna be? Like, what if I do this in the wrong order in some way? But they guarded against it very well. And you get lots of great stuff in this section, but the biggest things come at the end, where you fight, where you come before Vendetta, and you learn about how Fatima came to be. You're kind of getting this in flashback and stuff, and then you learn basically she was killed in a car accident when Sly was chasing Vendetta.
I mean, that car chase scene that happens earlier, I feel like maybe it was on Democratus or Grimacer, or that culminates like you said in the scene with Detta here. That car chase scene was long,
yes,
in an engine cinematic, and they had to build all those spaces to do it as well. I mean, essentially custom spaces.
I think most of it was actually spaces you had been in.
And
reused in artful ways.
Maybe
I think you'd be surprised. There are a couple things that were new. There's definitely a curving tunnel that I don't think we saw ever in the game, but a lot of those spaces you had been in. They were above you.
Maybe. I tried to scrutinize that to some degree, but that whole sequence was, I mean, it was cool because it had so much to do with Fatima's history, and how that all came to be, and the letter that she leaves for him that he never reads, and those sort of like, it really makes, and that's kind of goes back to my point about facial expression and the facial tech that they did. Because there's some, as cheesy as it is to say, they got a little subtlety out of that stuff in a couple of those moments with the two of them toward the end,
absolutely.
which I thought was pretty impressive.
I really liked it when she learned how she had come to be and how Sly had borrowed money and basically put his ass in Detta's sling to bring her back, to put her digitally into his assistant or whatever, in that floating thing that follows him around that contains
a cursor.
Yeah, the cursor, right?
They even contextualize
cursor,
the cursor.
Right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I agree. I thought that was terrific, and I actually think you're right. I mean, there's good artful camera work to pay off on the little facial animation that they have. They move in the camera at just the right time, and you see the face change. And part of that is just montage effect, right? You associate what you've just heard with the face that they're making, and you interpret it as sadder than maybe it is if you were seeing it in some sort of neutral setting. But it works. I think I thought it was terrific. Really quality stuff. Let's kind of hustle along here because we're
going to finish up.
So anyway, we battle through Detta's palace. We finally get to Detta. We have a couple of battles with him.
Little Metal Gear moment.
And with the big robot that he's in.
It had to be a Metal Gear reference, yeah.
Yes, I would think so. It looks pretty Metal Gear-y. And then I actually in the battle with him alone, I actually had Stiletto do all the damage. just to make it more role playing for me. Like Sly's just doing support and gonna let her get her revenge because it implied some really, really grotesque stuff on the part of Detta there. And then they knock him off the top of his building after that, and that's the end of Vendetta. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and not only that, she throws some daggers into him, and then he falls.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it felt like a good payoff. One thing that somebody in the chat had said was it would be really cool if the game noticed that you were doing this, that you were basically doing all the damage with one character and the other one was just supporting. Like if it somehow recognized that and played into that a little bit more, it would be neat. And I agree, but that's a tough thing to. You never know what people are gonna. Yeah. That's really thinking into the player quite a lot, and of course that battle's meant to be a challenge. So, not that it wasn't challenging, but it really just took longer, I think, more than anything else. Yeah, and then we go back, and that's when the big final reveals happen. Why don't you take those, since I just kind of blasted us through the end of Vendetta?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can go. Yeah, I'll go through pretty quickly, but so yeah, you get the key stone back to Rowdy, and then he reveals that the Echo Gate actually has been in Anachronox the whole time, and it's the fountain. The fountain. And so there's there's a convenient little platform kind of thing that you got to walk out on, and it's so funny that's the way the scene. Everyone's standing there. You have the keystone, and he says you got to destroy the keystone. So none of the sort of plans of chaos can come to pass. You have to go and throw it in the fountain or whatever. And they all kind of are joking with each other of who should go do it. And somebody I think suggests, maybe Boots suggests that Grumpus has to go do it. And he's like, I don't want to go do it. And then they kind of ride him enough to where he says, okay, I'll go do it, which is sort of funny because of what happens in a second. And he kind of walks out on the platform, and he has, of course, the keystone in his hand. And then there's this moment where he's like, everyone's like, wait, what are you doing? Why aren't you destroying it? And he puts it in this slot and then, slams it down and then turns around. And then the wind kind of whips up and reveals that underneath his long beard the whole time is a symbol of the dark, what's that group called?
Servants.
The dark servants. And he's essentially been a bad guy the whole time. And causes this whole chain reaction to happen. And then it turns out these obelisks all throughout Anachronox actually were hiding some of those chaos monster things, and they erupt and start harassing the town, the city. And then and then Ganon shows up on this big platform.
Whatever his name is. Fate.
Yeah. I just think he looked like Ganon from various Zeldas. Grumpus basically gets on a platform or teleports out of there and escapes as well during that sequence.
He's sucked up by the wind, into the vortex up there,
Yeah, and essentially the dark. God darn it, what are they called? The dark servants. Yeah, so memorable. The dark servants, are essentially invading, etc. And essentially, this platform comes down from that same portal that was on Limbus, and this dude, I don't even know how to describe him. Looks different than anyone else we've seen. So we assume he's somebody, somebody in charge on the chaos side. They don't really explain very much, but essentially that keystone set the whole thing in motion that chaos wanted to set in motion and right out underneath you. And so you guys all, the whole party just kind of runs at this guy, jumps on the platform before he leaves, and you have this final battle on this platform, which is sort of abstract. And I don't really get it other than for the sake of the battle, that it is the way it is, but it symbolizes all the different elements that the game has had throughout the whole time, I believe, right? So it has there's 6 of them, I think.
There are 6 colors.
6 colors, and each of them is different damage type, and so. But
there's no white one, so there are things missing, I think, from the bug stuff. I tried to make direct analogies, and I was like, well, okay, there's a lot of. I feel like there were more colors in the.
Could be, yeah. There's
Elementor. But there are maybe only the 6 status effects. That's possibly true. I
think the white is the only. Yeah, there's also black or obsidian bugs, I think. Too.
Right. Yes, there are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a white and black that are not represented, but other than that, I think those.
Yeah, red, green, yellow.
Cyan, blue,
cyan,
violet.
Yeah.
Violet, maybe.
Yeah, violet. Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, so it's interesting battle. I actually I couldn't figure out what was going on at first, and then I did eventually figure it out. He has these essentially these spheres for each representing each element, and you are fighting those. You can't actually touch him at all, and you're fighting the spheres. And once one goes away, you actually can step into its place based on the character who's nearest to that. And if you don't do that, he will respawn them. And so you kind of have to do this weird timing thing because it's that active, combat system. It doesn't always work out, and it can be. I was frustrated at a couple moments because it's just the way that the active timing was happening. I wasn't able
I
to
died like 4 times, so I died twice on stream, and then it took me 3 tries the next night as well. So or the night after that.
And you're not playing on easy, right? You're playing.
I'm not. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I didn't die, but I definitely got close because I had so many resources by the end of the game that I could just burn. And just the timing was just really tricky to get, so you basically need to, eliminate his options by surrounding him, by taking down each of those. Oh, and the other thing is Rose. One of the reasons that I took Rho with me on all of my adventures is I love her one ability that's I think it's called Plasma Wall. Have you used that?
Right.
Or do you remember that?
I have, yeah. It does a lot of damage.
It does a lot of damage, but it also does, it's an area effect. So it does damage to everything. So I used the heck out of that thing, and that was really handy in that battle because you could basically damage all of them.
Sly's third skill does that as well.
Which I never got that. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. You can find that. It does a this aerial thing that does a ton of damage to everything as well. So
nice.
That was super helpful. So I basically held him back as long as I could and Stiletto back as long as I could because Rho for me was not particularly strong. Even though she had that area effect, it wasn't super helpful. So instead I leaned on the other two because they did a lot more damage and I could concentrate my fire and maybe knock something down in one go.
Right.
And they had things that made them have a ton of energy so that they could do a lot of the mistech attacks because their mistech attacks did thousands of points of damage each. So that's how I kind of managed it. But
it's definitely would be hard.
Battle.
I had when it started and I kind of wasn't fully grokking what was going on. I had flashbacks of the end battle in Final Fantasy IX. Like I got this sinking feeling where I was like, "Uh-oh, maybe I'm not ready for it. Maybe I didn't prepare." And the trouble is this is a linear RPG, so there's no way for me to go and grind. Like this is it. Like
you could level up clearly because you can go back. Dungeons do refresh and things like that.
No, it's not the leveling; it's the finding of all of the abilities and all that.
Right, it's the getting the stuff is a pain in the neck, and
I also didn't have
and I definitely missed them. And I was lucky to find Sly's his final thing because he had 3 levels of skill. But yeah, definitely I missed stuff. I mean, I have no idea if Paco was upgradable. No idea. Definitely didn't find anything.
No, there definitely are places you can go back to do his fist thing to get stuff. And I got Rho's second one, which some of the higher level ones, the animations are really pretty elaborate. They're definitely trying to go after that Final Fantasy vibe with some of Detta's high end ones. That one,
that one that's
coming from outer space.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that was long.
Too long, but
a little bit too long.
Yeah.
All right,
but I mean, do you want to talk about the very, very end though? I mean, as far as like the last scene.
The last scene is basically you get a sense that Sly has grown because he has a little chat with Fatima and he apologizes, which is not the Sly we knew. And then basically they have their Reservoir Dogs moment.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to.
They all walk out and they're all individually announced, and they make their way presumably to the ship, and then they basically go into the previous universe.
Yeah, and they fly into the gate thing. And
roll the credits.
Yeah.
So I can definitely understand why people feel like, oh my god, biggest cliffhanger ever. On the other hand, it feels like a Star Trek game or Star Trek series that just didn't get another season. And you're like, oh, what happens next? Oh, well, that's the end of the adventures. Maybe it can't be recovered. Maybe because it's a different universe, we just can't play it in our universe. We need to tunnel back.
That's perfect. We need to
tunnel back to a prior universe ourselves in order to play.
It's impossible for us to play it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that's good. I like it.
Yep.
That's really good.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to say let's not do a break tonight because we're already almost at an hour.
Yeah, let's roll. We can roll through. I think we know
some quick pillars and stuff. I'm gonna start. Mine is let your freak flag fly. And by that I mean not so much that it's freakish, but I do think that one of the things that really appealed to me the whole time playing the game was how specific some of the references were, and they're not the obvious references usually. I mean, there are, obviously this time there was Star Wars, but there was also M, a Fritz Lang German expressionist movie about a pedophile. I mean, so they are pulling from all over the place. There's
every section had something to pull,
something
multiple things to pull from.
Right.
Yeah.
Moby Dick, I remember being mentioned at one point a long while back, and they're not all going to come to me by any means, but I definitely all throughout thought I really appreciate, even if it's not one voice, I appreciate that they didn't reach up to the shelf and just pull down the easiest reference, the most common film or book or whatever that they could pull from to get their humor. It feels very idiosyncratic, and that's really, really nice. And because it's also all somewhat wacky, it can just do that, and it just works. And it doesn't have to be. There's enough that's original and not purely referential, like all the comic stuff that they do on the Grimacer is all good and not. It's all basically original. There's no satire or whatever. It's all just kind of funny, goofy comic book stuff. There's plenty that is original that when they do reference stuff, it can be kind of off kilter. And for a lot of players, probably that stuff would go over their head. And so it means you're not going to probably get everything that all the illusions that are being made, but I really appreciate them, and they make me laugh when I realize what they're doing. I did not get Endor just until you pointed it out to me this evening, which is hilarious to me. I guess I didn't pay attention to the name, but I had picked up on everything else there. I was like, Woggies? That sure sounds like Wookiees. But yeah, funny stuff. So that would be probably my number one. My number one thing about what I take away from this thing and what really makes it stand out to me. How about you?
Yeah, I have two, but the main one I want to talk about, and I'll hit the other one very quickly, but the main one that we've talked a lot about and we talked about in pre-show is, I guess I'll summarize by saying the statement, always keep them guessing. And it's sort of a cheesy way to summarize it, but I haven't played a game in a long time, and even the games we've played on the podcast, things like Soul Reaver or whatever, that try to go in really interesting different places, and had some really fun, surprising moments. But this one, I just couldn't. Every level, every event, every sequence, every character that was added in, I just couldn't have seen it coming, and. Clear, it's hard to say how much that was a really overt goal and pillar for them, but they didn't hold themselves back from doing that. These days, once we teach you something along the way, it's something that typically you're going to use again down the road. And of course they have a combat system, but I didn't mention this, but in Rose, her own solo level, there's this whole mechanic where you're picking up these boxes and moving these boxes around that is only used in that level. And they do that all through the game, and
that's that JRPG influence right there.
Yeah. So it's very custom, but then like you talked about with the great catch and reference of just like a series of Star Trek episodes, or a season of Star Trek, like that sense of, what's the next episode going to be about? Because it's not going to have anything to do with the previous episode, and that's okay. And that's actually why I keep watching the show, and I just didn't, I didn't do a lot of research before we started playing, but I just didn't see that coming, and could not believe some of the stuff that happened. And that's just a mini segue into my second one, is just, the big takeaway is just focus on writing and characters and just having fun with creating interesting characters, and kind of a mashup. And of course, we talked a lot about this, but Democratus specifically, I would go on no mission without Democratus, and because there's no other game where I can take a planet with me as a party member that I know of, that even has as much character as it does. And then missions take place on. So just not. They just didn't hold themselves back about doing whatever crazy idea came to their mind, and they created a structure for the game that allowed them to do this. Where it's just this planet hopping, posse of crazy characters that are all going on these wacky missions, and it gave them the canvas to do it. So. Yeah.
And even though it's a serious story about the universe maybe ending, there's a lightheartedness about all of it that really
the humor
shines. That there's humor, but also just they're all out having this adventure, right? I mean, it's not super serious. It reminds me at times of Zelda, where you'll just run across some weird character like, Tingle or whatever, or the guy who delivers mail in one of the games who there's just like this goofiness, this playfulness to it that I think often Western RPGs, of course, some sort of weird hybrid, but it's made by a Western developer. They're often too self-serious, and they're very focused on, there's this horrible thing and you're the chosen one and it's all grim. And I mean, I think partly I'm responding to this because our culture and our games and our popular entertainment generally has gotten more grimdark ever since, I don't know, Nolan's first Batman movie or whatever. I'm not sure what really kind of tipped the scale there, but there's definitely here, it's never too serious, and there's always goofiness, and I love that. I wish there was more of that in games. I actually think that for all its seriousness of its actual story, I think Final Fantasy 15, which was a thing I was playing, I think partly overlapping with this game, I appreciate is that it's four buddies who are having this thing, and there's a lot of joking around because they're just young men, right, who've known each other for a long time, and they just goof around, right, and I appreciate not everything not being grim all the time and so dark.
Well, I have a suspicion, especially because games with humor that's handled, halfway decent, are so rare. I have a feeling that's a big element of why this is a cult classic for people and why it's stuck in people's heads, because in a sea of, and to be honest, around the same time, we just talked about it with Deus Ex, right? Which was completely serious and just everything was at high stakes, and I don't remember any humor in that. That was the kind of stuff that was out there. And so when you have this come upon you, and one of the, I don't know if I mentioned it in the first episode, but one of the quotes that I found in doing the minimal, setup research for the series was actually from Jeff Green. I don't know if you know Jeff Green, the journalist, ex-journalist.
Yeah. Computer Gaming World. Yeah.
Green Speak.
Yep.
Yeah, and really funny guy, and he has a quote about how great this game is, that in his review at the time, and it just is it's a surprising game. It catches you off guard because of the humor and because of like what is this in this sea of, the industry in general, the industry at this time was just way too into itself. And it stands out. So it's a shame that it didn't get to continue.
Yeah, it's a shame that it didn't get to continue rather. But I also, I hope more people play it. It feels like a game that at the time, partly because of the circumstances of the studio, which was that the office that made this game closed. basically I think a month after this game shipped.
Oh.
So there wasn't really a big
yeah
follow-on kind of push and excitement, and I also feel like it would have been really interesting to see what this team would do next. I'm just kind of sad that we never got a chance to see that, because they do, like we touched on in a prior episode, it feels like a team that was really firing on all cylinders together, working hard together. And I'm sure that there are stories of where that was not the case, because every game is that way. But it's nonetheless the case that you feel like there are touches everywhere in this game that tie together to the larger story or the themes or whatever, and those can just come from everybody pulling kind of in the same general direction. So
I wrote the last note I wrote down for the last session was labor of love. I kind of get that feeling from it, where they put their hearts into it and came out of it together that way. And then we have to end with, before we get to mail, we have to end with the best. I think it was his last line. Do you remember what he said? I was hoping you would put it.
Let's go get some breakfast.
Yeah, and then the song plays. Yeah, I was hoping that the intro would include the breakfast somehow, but
no, I'm sorry. I'm more grimdark. I had to make you the enemy.
Yeah, but it's just such a funny. It's like, I don't want to say it's like the perfect line to end with, but it's so Sly Boots, and it's so this game. Where it's like, that's, I don't know. I just loved, I laughed out loud when
I did too. That. I did too. It's very funny. And it's the right note to end on. Let's see, where are we time-wise here? And we're over an hour already. I'm tempted to push off email the next time. What do you think?
Let's do it. Let's push it off. Let's close down.
Let's set it there. There is an email. We have one email about trophies or achievements in this game, but we'll touch on that next time. But I have it, Moss. That's from Moss Neotech Proto, who was in my streams and in my dreams, Moss.
It's an interesting question. It'll be fun to talk about it next time.
Yeah, it'll be good. And now you've read it, and so you'll have some time to think about it. And we both will. So in any case, you can shoot us email at devgameclub@gmail.com. We generally read them every episode, but it is late and I am tired. We had some technical hurdles this evening getting started, so we're going to try to keep it a little briefer. You can also find the podcast on Twitter at devgameclub. I am at Brett_Duville, and he is
at Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
If you have a moment, try to find us on Apple Podcasts and give us a rating or a review. We really appreciate it. It helps us reach new audiences. Thanks so much, and we hope we'll be coming back to you next time with an interview guest. Until then, I say good night.
Good night.